Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel. So Violet is now in game and we can see her abilities, so let's get straight into it. So we did Dory yesterday, and Dory is also a support guardian, so we're just going to go straight into Violet's abilities, starting with her core ability. At the start of each combat, all enemies are inflicted with a minus 40% critical damage debuff for the remainder of the encounter, or until Violet is defeated. So Dory also has this debuff as well, so I'm glad more Guardians are actually getting it. Heavy attacks inflict a shock, dealing 3% damage per second for 10 seconds, and this only stacks once. So in total, during that 10-second period, that is 30% total shock damage that Violet will be dealing. Now, basic attacks have a 10% chance to grant allies a 20% defense buff that lasts for 10 seconds, and it stacks 3 times, so up to 60% defense buff. If Violet's target is inflicted with a shock, her basics have a 35% chance to grant a defense buff. So basically what you want to do is you just want to heavy attack loads, get shock. It will just increase the chance of getting a defense buff from 10% to 35%. So that's a 25% increase. So that's great. So that's kind of the rotation you want to do. You want to use your heavy attack, get the shock on your enemies, and then it will increase the chance of getting a defense buff from basic attacks. Now moving on to the special ability, Violet grants a force field to all allies. So a force field basically is a protective barrier that takes damage before armor or shield and destroys projectiles on impact, preventing the target from being hit. Damage resistance is ignored when force field absorbs damage. So it's basically a force field. The strength of a force field is equal to 50% of Violet's defense at the time of the creation. So you want to use a heavy attack, get the defense buffs, and then use your special. Force fields absorb basic and heavy projectiles and will last for 10 seconds or until destroyed. So it lasts for 10 seconds, or if it's destroyed, it just instantly goes from all your allies. So this is so good. Whilst a force field is active, the protected ally gains 100% resistance to shock and burn damage. So it's 100% counter towards shock and burn damage dealers. So someone like Magnificent, who just burns you after using a special attack, you got 100% resistant, you're immune to it during the force field phase, so that's so good as well. For the first 5 seconds whilst a force field is active, it grants 2% armor per second to the ally, so that in total is 10% armor, as well as having the defense buff. You're immune as well to shock and burn. So it is so good to have this force field, and it just makes her seem like a really good guardian to have. So moving on to the signature ability, Violet grants a force field to allies at the start of each combat, and armor granted from force field is increased by an additional 2%. Each combat you're also just going to enter with a force field as well for 10 seconds, and you're going to get additional armor, 2% additional armor, so this is so good as well. The strength of Violet's force field is increased by additional 50% of their defense. So it's just stronger, and this is at Sig 100s. You want to have her ideally as a higher Sig. So yeah, this is really good. We're going to go over to her talents now. So moving on to her talents, we're going to start with the elite one. When a force field is applied to an ally, adjacent enemies are knocked back. Allies resist 30% basic and heavy damage from tank and melee enemies whilst the force fields are active. So she's very good against tank and melee enemies. She resists 30% damage. She also knocks back enemies as well, so another knockback guardian. Great to have. Knockback is so good in this game, especially when you're surrounded by lots of different enemies. Having knockback is so important. Now moving on to her advanced talent. When a force field is destroyed or expires, enemies are inflicted with a shock, dealing 5% damage per second for 10 seconds. Shocks inflicted by other allies deal an additional 10%. So if you have shock guardians, that's just going to benefit, and every time a force field is removed, it's just going to deal so much more damage as well. Shock damage is just going to be so key for her. So in total that is 50% damage every time a force field expires. So good to have, so make sure you level that one up. The other advanced one, Violet's critical damage debuff removes an additional 40% critical damage from enemies. So an additional 40% critical damage, so they're just going to be doing less damage towards you. Also great to have. And in the other advanced one, once per encounter, whilst at or below 50% HP, Violet gains a 20% defense buff that lasts for the rest of the encounter. She also gains an invisible buff for 15 seconds, greatly lowering enemies' aggression towards her. So this is quite new. She's going to become a ghost, and enemies are just not going to attack her as much, so she won't be taking as much damage. So this is great. I'm very excited for this as well. And this is the first actual support guardian that doesn't actually regenerate any health, so it's kind of unique. But her shock damage, her defensive buffs, her force fields, it's just so good, and it's just going to make her such a good guardian to have on your team. I'm so excited to test her out. Now moving on to her traits, she has 4 traits. She has stealthy, gravity defying, lawful and Pixar. Now none of these really are in the game as a tower. I really do hope they come soon. Just like the Pixar one, there's a lot of Pixar guardians coming into the game. Having a Pixar tower will be just so good. So she has 4. In the future she'll be very good for towers, hopefully. Anyways, that is it for today's video. If you did like it, please leave a like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.
Peace out.